Yes, there's a low cost of living. Yes, there's great education and healthcare and parks and fun big city amenities. But why do people choose to live in Cincinnati? And maybe more importantly, why do they choose to stay? All of that coming up. Hey guys, welcome back. It's Eric Sztanyo from Keller Williams Realty and TeamStanyo.com, where we are helping you find your home and strengthen your family. I'm a Cincinnati and Northern Kentucky realtor. I've lived here 30 plus years in the greater Cincinnati area, both in Northern Kentucky and on the Cincinnati side. I wanted to bring you guys something special that hit me today. A lot of you guys who watch this channel actually are Reds and Bengals fans, and probably my favorite sports journalist. I heard an interview of him this morning from another terrific sports journalist, Dan Hoard, who covers the Bengals and University of Cincinnati, but Paul Dougherty, who's been a sports writer here in town for 30 plus years, covering the Reds, covering the Bengals, just a fantastic writer. Paul began writing here in Cincinnati, I believe around 1988, which is exactly when my family moved to Cincinnati from Michigan. I was 6 years old at the time. The Bengals went to the Super Bowl. I didn't think that was a big deal, and then there was a 30-year drought. And then the Reds won in 1990, wire to wire, and I'm just like, oh, this is great. We just win everything here. And then it's been quite a drought, but I followed Paul Dougherty's work all growing up, and I didn't realize it because I've been reading more of The Athletic lately, and Paul Dehner Jr., I love his stuff, but Paul is 64 and he's retiring. And so Dan Hoard did this interview with him, and it was a great interview. I definitely recommend checking it out, talking about different players and experiences and stories he's had over the years, from Chad Johnson to Carl Pickens to people who threatened his life. So it's a pretty fantastic interview, talking about his relationship with Sam White and Paul Brown and Mike Brown. Really great interview, but what stood out to me at the end, and particularly for this channel, which is a real estate channel and talking about living here in the Cincinnati area, is Dan asked him, hey, you've had multiple opportunities over the years to move away from Cincinnati, and you've had different job opportunities. Why did you choose to stay here? And so I'm going to bring in the audio from this interview and let you guys listen, and then I'll do a little bit more commentary on it.
You've had opportunities to leave over the years for various media outlets. Why did you stay?
That's a great question. And this is going to sound hokey and corny and whatever. And I'm not saying it because I need to make friends, because it doesn't matter anymore. We stayed for primarily family reasons. I had two chances to go to the LA Times in the early 90s. And I spent a lot of time out there with a real estate agent driving me all over Orange County. I didn't want to raise my kids in Los Angeles. I had no desire to have them go to school out there. And that's going to sound crazy because people think I'm some flaming liberal, which I am not. And that's a whole nother podcast, Dan. But I didn't want to raise them in Los Angeles. I hate traffic. I didn't want to get stuck in traffic my whole freaking life.
I didn't want to raise my kids in Los Angeles. Very interesting comment. And this is coming from someone who probably made that decision actually in the 90s. And yet when I have a lot of you who reach out to me talking about moving to Cincinnati, it's a very similar conversation I hear. I don't want to have my kids raised in Los Angeles or Phoenix or Seattle or Chicago or New York or these various places around the country, because you're looking for a place that's going to be good for your kids, that's going to be good for your family. Not only the education, but maybe the values and the morals you want for your family. I did another video. If you guys haven't watched it yet, check out this right here. You can watch it after this one. Maybe we'll put it up at the end, but it's why Cincinnati is a great place to put down family roots. And Cincinnati is a unique city in this aspect, that what you find here oftentimes are families who have lived here multi-generationally. And it's not only they decided to choose to live here, but they decided to choose to stay here. So let's keep going in this interview with Paul Dougherty and see what else he has to say.
Respected older columnist at the Chicago Tribune years ago. And I asked him, should I take this job? And he said, let me ask you something. And I said, okay. He said, are you happy where you are? Yeah. Are you making reasonable money? Yeah. Do you get to cover almost everything that the quote unquote big guys in Los Angeles, New York, Chicago cover? I said, yeah. He said, do they treat you well? Yeah, most of the time. And he said, what's your problem? And that's when it hit me, along with the family stuff, that the only thing that would have made me want to move to Los Angeles to work for the Times was ego, was to say, hey, I work for the LA Times. You don't. And that it didn't mean that much to me. And so we decided to stay, and what I thought back in my youth would be a 3 to 5 year deal here when I signed on in '88. I'm still here. They can't get rid of me. And now I get to walk away on my own volition. So I guess it worked out.
Very interesting part of this interview to me. Paul Dougherty, he's super talented. If you haven't read his stuff, go check him out. Had opportunities to go to LA multiple times. And I think if you're a professional who's on top of your game, or you run a business, or you have ambition, and you grow up here in Cincinnati, there's always gonna be this desire like, hey, can I make it on the bigger stage? Can I go to New York? Can I go to Chicago? Can I go to LA and make it there? Can I be someone big and important? This is the interesting part of Cincinnati to me. It's a big city, right? It's one of the top 20, 25 largest metros in America, but it's also got a small town feel. And so you have these big city amenities. You have the major sports teams, it's 2 million plus population, but it's also kind of community oriented, and you're never like 2 steps away from knowing kind of everyone in the city, like that Kevin Bacon game. And so 2 themes that Paul hits on here that I think are really interesting are ego and contentment. And what we find out here is the reason why he really wanted to move to LA, because as this kind of older, wiser journalist said to him, hey, you've got everything you want there. Why are you moving? And the answer was, I want my ego to be puffed up. And I think this is such an interesting interview, and kind of, it's not like there's no ego in Cincinnati whatsoever, but there is a part of the city that, because we get looked over a lot from national press, national media, even just watch the Bengals. Like, for those of you who are Bengals fans and have followed their story, they rose to the Super Bowl last year, and everyone's just saying it was a fluke, right? It shouldn't have happened. And I guarantee you, just because this is how it works in Cincinnati, when Joe Burrow takes us back to the Super Bowl this year, because our offensive line is actually going to let him live and survive and have a pocket, and T are going to be running double routes, when we get back to the Super Bowl and win it, everybody's just going to crap on it again, because that's just what happens here in Cincinnati. Is like, you don't get a lot of credit because you're not LA or Chicago or New York. And so you kind of have to come to terms with that if you want to live here. And I found that interesting in this interview. That's what happened with Paul. He realized his ego was what was going to take him to LA. And then he also realized that he could be content here. Not only content, but really enjoy it. And so that, I feel like it's important if you are thinking of moving here and you want to be, can you be a big fish in a small pond kind of deal? Are you okay with a smaller town feel, even though we have bigger city amenities? For Dan Hoard, the interviewer, that reminded him of one other Hall of Fame sports journalist here in town, Hall of Famer Reds broadcaster Marty Brennaman.
You sound a little like our mutual friend, Marty Brennaman.
Yes. Yeah. I think, Marty felt the same way. And he took far less money to hang around with the Reds than he could have gotten had he gone to Boston, for example. They wanted to hire him. I think Chicago, the Cubs, at some point had a flirtation with Marty. But, pretty much the same.
So this is a warning. If you think you're moving here for 3 to 5 years, be careful. You might get sucked into Cincinnati for the long term and end up staying for the rest of your life. Guys, this city's amazing. I love it here. If you are looking to move to Cincinnati area, give us a call at Team Sztanyo, 513-813-6293. If you want to watch that video where I talk about putting down roots and why this is such a great city for that, click right here. Thanks so much. We'll see you in the next one.